can't accept the loss, I'm hard-headed. There's a little bit of madness to my method. Many falling off that fine line that I'm treading. I risk anything to be great, and I'm not letting nobody rob me of my victory. Number one, that's what I'm meant to be. When by any means, only thing that makes sense to me, I can make nice or make history. I got that dog in me, yeah. Turn me up. Big energy, got the crowd going nuts. I got that dog in me, yeah. Annie up. I take on anyone. I don't need a one-on-one. I got that dog in me, yeah. I'm talking all bite, no bark. I could rip your squad apart. I got that dog in me. So what's up? Yeah. So what's up? I told her move over. Enough of that mediocre I've been. The man since cruising around in the stroller. I got ice in my veins like a cut in Minnesota. Why not show you how I'm built? Come a little closer. Ayy, lot of heart, been smart, aura gotta glow. We can restart, give head start, still get the same result. I'm about mine. Don't you get it confused? I'ma win again. Yeah, that's all that I do. I got that dog in me, yeah. Turn me up. Big energy, got the crowd going nuts. I got that dog in me, yeah. Annie up. I don't need a one-on-one. I got that dog in me, yeah. I'm talking all bite, no bark. I could rip your squad apart. I got that dog in me. So what's up? Yeah. So what's up? They don't get it.
Hey, yo. Happy Canada Day. You'll notice a tone shift in my voice. I'm a very happy person. So today I want to do something that I didn't do in the live, which is provide coherent analysis on the winners and losers of Fred VanVleet's big decision, which really is rocking the NBA world right now. It was the biggest per annual deal signed until Tyrese Halliburton's deal is going through. So I want to talk about the ripple effects of this and the 20 winners and losers. And I have graphics for everything, and I've been preparing this for the last hour, and I'm really excited. So this is not going to be a long live. It's going to buzz right through. Make sure to hit subscribe. I think we're 10 or 12 subscribers away from 6,000 subscribers. What a crazy milestone. It seems like just yesterday we were at 5,000. So hit the like, hit the sub up. I think I'm going to wake up tomorrow to like 6,010 subscribers, and that's just a feeling. So make it happen. All right. First of all, big thank you to 500, 600, 700 people that were in the live as we all, Raptor fans, collectively found out that Fred VanVleet was not coming back. And if you missed that, I wanted to share the minute we found out, because it is pretty hilarious. And I captured your responses, and just take a look at it. Oh, no. Yes.
Wait, Fred VanVleet?
Yes.
Let's go.
I told you.
Scotty for point.
Yes.
Great.
I liken myself to
Oh, man, I'm so happy.
I told you he was haggling for that third year. I promise you. I likened, when I heard this, when I saw this again, when I saw it back, I didn't realize how excited I was. That was a genuine expression of happiness. And I tell you that I reminded myself immediately of that old woman who's on Price is Right. And she spins that wheel and she doesn't realize she's hit $1. So she's like, oh no. And then, yeah. Rob, why are you so hated on Twitter? I don't know. I don't care. But I mean, yeah. Anyways, okay. So let's get into this. But I mean, thank y'all for this response. It was hilarious, and that's going to become a subject of a reel that I think is going to go viral tomorrow, because I think this is such a wholly unique situation. Usually when one of your best players signs with another team, the fan base is usually bummed out, like, oh my God, we're going to be so bad. And I think when we go into the winners and losers, I think what we're going to do is we're going to find out just who won and who lost this trade. So let's get into that. Let's stop rambling on. We got nearly 60 people in here at 3 o'clock in the morning. So let's do this. The first winners of Fred VanVleet's big decision, surprise, surprise, it's Clutch Sports, man. Look, love them or hate them, this is a group of entrepreneurs. They have gotten a lot of athletes into favorable situations. They've gotten them paid. They've gotten trade demands. They've dominated headlines. They always keep their athletes in the news cycle. You can call it toxic, you can call it whatever. But if at the end of the day, an agent primary responsibility is, and services to their client, then Clutch is getting people paid, and Rich Paul really is the GOAT in terms of just getting, I've followed a lot of agents. I've been personally curious about the work that they do. I've met a few. I've never seen anyone roll like this. He's so loud. He's so in your face about what he's doing, and it's working. So, until somebody does it better, or somebody, proves that it's not effective, this is largely like an amazing thing. Winner number 2, Fred VanVleet's bank account. Look, this is a huge deal, right? You can argue he's massively overpaid, and he is. And obviously, there's all sorts of extenuating circumstances in terms of why he got the deal that he did. The cap is going up. The Houston Rockets have a whole bunch of really young players, and ultimately they needed to pay somebody this money, and they decided to pay him. And I'll tell you afterwards why this was such a bad move for them. But, you can't even, his bank account is a winner. It's really as simple as that. Winner number 3, undersized guards everywhere, including our very own Marquise Noel. Look, if you're undersized, if you're an underdog, if you see yourself as an underdog in life, obviously Fred VanVleet has become somewhat of a spirit animal for you, and an avatar for all of your hopes and dreams, and whatever. I think a lot of us identify with the underdog. This is why Rocky was such a popular movie in the 70s and 80s, and honestly, this is why so many movies do well. And as a director, I can tell you that the story arc of Fred VanVleet is definitely inspirational to anyone who identifies with it. So, there's undrafted guys who are seeing this as an example. There's a book that Brian and I talked about in our Scotty interview called The Talent Code. And really, you just need someone to do it once, right? Fred VanVleet may retire as the greatest, or one of the greatest undrafted guys of all time. There have been a couple that are really good, but he's definitely going to go down in the top 5 of that list. And none of them touched the heights that he's touching right now in terms of just the money that he's been able to secure and the success he's been able to have. I mean, when you look down his resume, it's very interesting. Career leader, game high for points, game high for assists for the Raptors, a finals MVP vote, an NBA championship, an all-star game. Yeah, I mean, if this guy somehow manages to get a 3rd-team All-NBA or something, he's not gonna be a Hall of Famer, but he's putting together quite a career. So, this is something that a lot of young undersized guards who are coming into an NBA, which is just dominated by big wings and guys like Amen Thompson and, bigger guards. I mean, this is an inspirational story. He can do it. I can do it, Winner number 4, Alperen Sengun. Look, maybe some of Fred VanVleet's new teammates in Houston are less than enthused. Oh my God, sorry. There's a motorcycle going by and my window's open. My apologies. One sec. Maybe some of Fred VanVleet's newer teammates are less than enthused about his presence and him coming, especially if they're familiar with Scotty, and Josh Christopher is familiar with Scotty, and Jalen Green's practically one of Scotty's best friends. So they're going to have the entire lowdown on what it's going to be like being in a locker room for VanVleet. But if there's one player who's sort of out of that AAU crowd and outside the North American circuit and really outside of anything that would threaten Fred, it's Alperen Sengun. And this is exactly the type of player that the Houston Rockets probably should be building around anyway, because he's shown a hell of a lot to this point in his career than Jalen Green has, or Kevin Porter Jr. has, or Jabari Smith has, for that matter. And, I think Nikola Jokic proved it. And I'm not saying Alperen Sengun is anything close to Nikola Jokic, but he is their best young player if you're just looking at performance and what he's shown on the court. And he's very young. And I think he's still 21 years old. He was one of the youngest players drafted in Scotty's draft. And look, he's just been sort of overlooked because he's been on a really bad team and his numbers aren't overly gaudy or impressive. And he has all sorts of defensive issues, but offensively, he's very talented. And this is exactly the type of player that Fred VanVleet is going to immediately make better. I think he's going to help him. He's going to use him. He's going to need him, because Fred VanVleet is not at a point in his career where he can get clear separation by himself. He's not bouncy. He's not elite. He's not a guy who can just get it off the bounce. So Alperen Sengun is going to be getting a lot of dimes, and I'm not sure how the other people on the team are going to feel about it, but I think Alperen Sengun is going to have a career year. Number 5, here's my man, Doc Cornell and Rockford, Illinois. Honestly, you have to whether you love him or you hate him, you have to admire that Fred VanVleet has done a lot for Rockford. And, you got to be proud. If I was from Rockford, I'd be super proud of him. I'm not from Rockford, so I'm not. But you got to admire how much that community, that entire city has supported him. And just like I said, for undersized people, it's also a really big deal when you're not from a place where basketball is usually played or basketball players usually make it out, especially if you're from an impoverished neighborhood or whatever, that you can become a bit of a source of light and inspiration for your entire community. And I think Fred has done that. So shout outs to Rockford, Illinois. Please stop threatening me and sending me, nasty, nasty messages. I think you guys win today. All right. Win number 6, Fred VanVleet's family. Like, this is the part that makes me smile. Honestly, I'm not a Fred VanVleet fan. I wanted him gone. Yes. But the idea that basketball is such an amazing vehicle for wealth redistribution, and in all honesty, in a league that's largely mixed race or black, and with owners that are largely white, this is exactly what we've been talking about. If you're someone who believes politically that there is a massive wealth gap between, minorities and traditionally white people, then I think that basketball becomes a great vehicle. And you have to, I guess, kind of respect, or if not kind of respect, you just have to respect when an African American athlete is able to get paid this kind of money, especially if they're, not idiots with their money and they're able to actually invest it back into their community. I mean, in all honesty, Fred VanVleet may, if he invests his money correctly, become a billionaire someday. And this contract is going to go a really long way to doing that. And what man out there doesn't want to take care of 20 generations of his family or 10 generations of his family? I think we all would love to. So this is such a big win for him and for his wife, Shanti, I believe is her name, and his daughter. It's such a great thing for them. And like, you put in the work, you get the results. Good for him. Win number 8, Scotty Barnes and Gary Trent Jr. OG seemed kind of indifferent. I don't know how Jeff Doughton felt. I couldn't read Precious Achua, but if there were 2 players that just seemed to always be affected by Fred VanVleet, it was your 2 drip kings, your 2 vibe guys, and 2 of your younger players, which is Scotty Barnes and Gary Trent Jr., both of whom do things, quite frankly, on the ball that Fred VanVleet did in their place. So in terms of isolation, late clock scoring, I think that's a Gary thing. I think Gary would be very good at it. And in terms of a lot of the playmaking responsibilities, I think that goes to Scotty. And I don't think any 2 players are going to be more freed, more liberated, and perhaps more benefited from Fred VanVleet's departure than these 2. Despite the narrative that Fred VanVleet makes their lives easier, I actually think in a lot of ways he kind of gets in the way, and replacing Fred VanVleet with a comparatively somewhat inefficient, somewhat similar-ish guard in Dennis Schroeder, who just doesn't quite operate at the same level of hubris and think that he is the leader of everything. He's going to kind of come in and be the guy. And, if you come into the Raptors and Scotty's, the young franchise guy, the pecking order is clear. If you've been there for a while and you've been kind of expecting that you're going to be the franchise guy, the dynamic's a little bit different. For the young kids coming in today, you see Scotty and Pascal as the guys. You don't see yourself as the guy unless you're signing for a max contract and you're Kevin Durant. So I think it's just going to be a little bit easier for these guys mentally. Winner number 9, Ime Udoka. He told us that he did not want to be on a team that was competing for the middle. He didn't want to be on a team that was 5th. And I get that. So now he's going to settle for a team that's going to be at best 9th, 8th, 10th. In a stacked Western Conference, honestly, this team might actually be 12th. But it is a win because, look, Ime is a serious coach, and he has inherited a pretty not so serious roster. And if you want any examples of this, check out, Houston Rockets fight, and you'll see Jalen Green and Jabari Smith just kind of shoving each other on the bench. And it just shows, that when you let inmates run the asylum, you can have some really bad results. So I think, in all honesty, that Ime Udoka needed one of those marching soldiers, if you will, one of those report back to coach snitches, those types. I don't mean to call Fred VanVleet a snitch, but you get what I'm saying, right? One of those guys who can kind of be one of the coaches, but also one of the players, but also be kind of competitive. It's so much more effective when that player who is sort of like the coach's pet, is also a kind of good player. It doesn't work as well when it's Thaddeus Young and Udonis Haslam. I think it works a little bit better when it's like your starting point guard. So, I think it could work well, especially because Ime is no nonsense, and maybe even Fred's getting a little bit out of line, or he's getting a little bit yappy with his younger teammates. I think Ime would be a way better candidate to put him in line than Nick Nurse ever was. So I think Ime Udoka wins, and quite frankly, you don't want to see a coach this talented fall to like a 60 loss team. So I think it'll be somewhat better that they're at least competing for something. I don't think they have control over their pick next year, so they have a strong vested interest to be actually good. Winner number 10, Darko Rajakovic. Oh, the Serbian wonder that we've all grown to love in very short order, who's always smiling and always laughing. Can you imagine just what would happen to this poor man and his vibes overall if he had to share a locker room with Fred VanVleet for the next 3 years? I think his hair would fall out and his hair would completely gray. It's already gray enough, right now. I think he's just a very upbeat and positive person. He's had the blessing of being around a lot of upbeat and positive situations. And honestly, the last time he wasn't in a very upbeat and positive situation was Phoenix with Robert Sarver, where his boss was really genuinely not a very good person, and he left within a year. It just strikes me as a person, this is just a read on him. I know a lot of people who know him, and they've all said the same thing. He's just a really good person. He's a really good person. He's a really good person. He cares about people. He cares about people. And, as another good person that really cares about people, I don't like being around people that don't care about people. It kind of, it weighs heavy on me when I'm around people like Fred VanVleet. So I'm just happy for him in that sense. And also I'm a little bit happy that there won't be really that pressure of being a luxury tax team, right? If you believe the rumors that the Raptors were willing to go as high as, 430 for Fred, even if you backloaded the shit out of both those contracts, you're pretty much hamstrung and you might be right at the tax line. There is some pressure from, MLSE that you got to win, right? And that's hard for a first year head coach. I think that's a little bit hard, right? So you do want to give him some sort of breathing room. Okay, like, you do things your way. You don't have this guy who's got like 3 coaches behind you. He knows how Dwayne Casey did it and Nick Nurse did it. No, it's just kind of getting a clean slate. You get to do things with Scotty and Grady and OG and Gary, and all those guys seem to really like each other already. From what I heard, Grady and OG is a vibe already. Like they're just really like it. It's never surprising to me when good people like good people. It's not that difficult to read, right? You can call me crazy and say I'm like reading too much into situations, but I'm not. Like you can see the vibes between these people, and it's all clean. Like the energy is all clean, the transfer is all clean, and it's a very good thing. And you'll see it on the court. You'll definitely see it on the court. There will be more extra passes. There will be more, there will be more communication on defense. There will be more my bad, instead of that whole like blame you, blame me body language. And I think that's just going to be easier to coach around with Darko. And I think, again, Fred VanVleet, having been here for 7 years, how much would he actually have let Darko really be the coach? How much would he be sort of undermining him? And I think this is just, it's a fair slate for Darko. And also it removes a little bit of the pressure. So I think it's a good thing. Winner number 11, our final winner of the night, is Jeff Doughton Jr. Honestly, one of my favorite players on this team. I love him. And, you get rid of Fred VanVleet, who was a major competition for minutes and honestly was playing 40 minutes, 38 minutes, 37 minutes a night. And you replace him with Dennis Schroeder, who's, in my opinion, not very good. Sorry to say, Dennis Schroeder. Just not great. I wasn't excited about many of the backup point guard options out there. The only one that I think was really good was DeLon Wright. And frankly, you didn't get DeLon Wright. You got Dennis Schroeder, right? A guy who's at best an 8th guy. I think the pathway to Jeff Doughton actually getting minutes just got better. And I think Darko Rajakovic can approach this from a bit of an open mind and say, hey, like, we didn't get some 25 million, 35 million guy that it's like, it's impossible to play anyone over him. No, you got a $13 million guy who's on a completely movable contract. And if Jeff Doughton outplays him, early on in camp, and which is totally possible, by the way, despite what people think, Dennis Schroeder's way better than Jeff Doughton. He's not way better. They're somewhat similar. Jeff is just really underrated, and Dennis Schroeder just played on a minimum contract, a veteran minimum last year in LA, and he got a lot of spotlight. So like the Raptors have a 2-year deal with with Dennis Schroeder, and I think I think it's a bit of injury insurance and also a bit of Scotty insurance. You don't know how he's going to cope with being a full-time point guard. You might have to just do damage control and move him back to small forward and try it again later in the year if it really struggles, etc. But I don't think he's going to struggle, and I think eventually, you'll see Jeff Doughton emerge. I think the Raptors really like him, so I think he wins out here. On to our losers. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. Well, I guess it's hard to start with losers without not starting with Jakob Poeltl and Pascal Siakam. So Jakob, honestly, he loses his pick and roll partner. He obviously loses a guy that he was at least close to 5-6 years ago. He might have soured on him now that he's changed, but I have no idea about that. It seemed like he was still talking very highly of him. And, he came here because he thought he was finally going to end the suffering of losing. And he's already clarified that he didn't want to be part of a rebuilding team. And obviously his deal was finalized while Fred's was still in negotiation. And I don't know if that was deliberate on the Raptors' part of, hey, technically it's not signed, but let's get this agreement out with Jakob before Fred backs out, and then Jakob suddenly is like, okay, pay me $25 million or I'm walking and you can't afford to lose me. Like, Jakob Poeltl really had maximum leverage here. And because Jakob Poeltl agrees, not only is he a loser here because he kind of doesn't get back, he doesn't get into a contention team. He's also a loser because I think that he left some money on the table. I know that might be hard for some people to believe, but having lost Fred VanVleet already, you can't actually afford to lose Jakob Poeltl at all. Otherwise, because you don't have your pick next year, and you gave up that pick for this guy. If he really, really wanted to haggle, if I was his agent and I was just an asshole, I would have haggled for 4 years, $100 million, and you would have given it to me. So, I think he left some money on the table, but, to be honest, the next competing offer for him was probably going to be 18. So I think you sort of outbid yourself a little bit, but I think he also left some money on the table. In terms of Pascal Siakam, honestly, some people disagree with this, but I think it's pretty clear that Pascal's best friend on this team was Fred, and really a big part of the whole home comfort of this place was coming up with Fred, and he's quoted Fred a lot of times, bet on yourself like my man Freddie. Like, I'll never forget that quote. And, Fred was one of his big supporters on the team. Now he's just like, it's him and a bunch of kids, there's no lineage now other than his coach is gone, his assistant coach is gone, his mentor is gone, his other mentor is gone. It's just everyone's gone. His trainer's gone. Rico Hines is gone. Earl Watson's gone. Everyone's gone except for him. He's just like the last guy. Have you ever been to the last guy left at a party where you came with your friends? It's just weird. So I have a feeling, despite what he's put out there, that he doesn't want to be necessarily traded. I think he might be open to being traded now. And we'll get into that right at the end when we talk about what the Raptors need to do. Losers number 2. Ooh, gosh, Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster do not look very smart right now. They had an opportunity at the trade deadline to trade Fred VanVleet for something. You cannot tell me that at $21 million, $22 million, you couldn't get anything back for a guy who just inked $43 million. Clearly, there was something out there for him. But as usual, Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster decided to evaluate, and they decided to be patient. And now they not only lose their pick next year, not only do they technically overpay for a center who does not shoot, who's still a very good player, but at my estimation, probably the 12th best center in the NBA and not the youngest. So kind of not a great thing. Kind of a weird role fit with a star that you're building around in Scotty, who does not shoot very well right now. You kind of want stretch bigs with a player like that, pick and roll bigs and stretch bigs. And you have a player who's kind of like not a stretch big. And now you have a timeline where you're trying to time out for, okay, well, we want Scotty to ascend to maybe all-star status by 2025, and Jakob Poeltl is going to be over 30 by that point. And it's such a silly thing. But maybe, and of course, you lose Fred VanVleet for nothing. You lose Danny Green for nothing. You lose Kawhi for nothing. You lose Kyle for something. At least you got something. You got Precious Achiuwa for him. And but then, you lose Goran Dragic, and then you give up a first-round pick, and then it's just really terrible asset management all around, man. I got to be honest. It just is. And yeah, I'm still a little bit, I'm optimistic about the Grady Dick pick, but there's still like a 1% part of me that was just like, we could have had Case and Wallace if y'all just had believed us when we told you this team was not worth saving. So it does not look good for them to lose an asset for nothing. But in all honesty, I think, you know what? Hang on. Let me try this again. I'm going to take them from losers, and I'm also going to say that they're also winners. So I was supposed to do that, and then I completely forgot. Let me say that here. Just forget that it says losers. I think the Raptors are also winners, and I'll talk about that at the very, very end. Okay? Moving on to the third loser, Toronto Sports Media. Y'all take an L, and I can't even tell you that I'm even like a little bit sympathetic towards it. You spent an entire year hyping the shit out of this guy, saying he wasn't selfish, saying it was necessary, this and that. He's all about winning. Josh Lewenberg, little Fred hype boy, goes on a show today saying like, oh my God, he can't stand losing. Oh my God, he hates losing. He had no patience for the young guys. Okay, well, thank you for admitting that part, my friend. But, like Fred was also kind of a really big source of information for these guys. He talked to them. They had relationships with this guy, right? They don't really have great relationships with OG, like maybe Kate Burness does. But like, I don't think Doug Smith has a great relationship with Scotty Barnes. And he's not about to form one now. After everything that he wrote about Scotty last year, bro, Scotty may not care, but Scotty definitely saw that. So they kind of picked the wrong horse and they lost. Like, you might think the Raptors lost here, but the Toronto Sports Media hedged hard that this team was going to be Fred's to run for a very long time. And they made their bed with him. And I tell you, these young kids who they ripped in the newspaper saying they were immature, saying they didn't work hard enough, saying they didn't take the job seriously, they read that shit. They have rabbit ears. They see all that. Now you have to cover a team where they're not only there, they're the leaders. Good luck. Good luck, y'all. Especially a big shout out to Michael Grange and Josh Lewenberg and Doug Smith. Doug Smith, especially you. You remember Fred VanVleet calling you Dougie all that time? I promise you, nobody else on this team is going to call you Dougie. All right. Losers number 4, the Houston Rockets. Oh God. The dreams that were and the dreams that became. The Houston Rockets started out 3-4 months ago with hopes of James Harden joining Jaylen Brown. That was the vision of all of this cap space. That was what you were clearing it up for. Bro, your fans are on, I don't want to say the word watch right now, okay? Like, you cannot even begin to imagine how disappointing this would be. This would be like saying that you're going to sign Michael Jordan. No, that's the wrong one. Saying you're going to sign LeBron and then signing Karis LeVert. Like, it's a massive drop-off. You might have paid him what you wanted to pay James Harden, but these are not comparable talents. These are not comparable guys to watch. I will watch James Harden play basketball. I'll pay to watch James Harden play basketball. It's actually beautiful to watch. And if you've ever been to a sporting event, obviously, I'm sure a lot of you have, it's really great to watch really talented players play basketball. It is not great to watch Fred VanVleet play basketball. I'm just being honest. He is not box office. He is not someone that I enjoy watching play basketball at all. There's nothing thrilling emotionally or, basketball wise about his game. Maybe he'll hit a couple of threes and then he'll get blocked by, the rim. And it's a frustrating product, man. And just like, I was pissed last year to think that he was a leader, but at least I always felt like somewhat better that he was on a bit of a discount contract. Can you imagine your team had their sights set on James Harden and Jaylen Brown joining Jalen Green and Jabari Smith, and you were thinking about playing, and oh my God, all the talk about, oh, well, the young guys get shafted on their development because we're going to be aiming for potentially championships with Jaylen Brown and James Harden. And now, not only do you not bring in veteran leadership that can actually aid and assist in the growth of your young kids, in my opinion, Like, it's not like you brought in Udonis Haslem and, like Otto Porter and, like you didn't bring in those like nurturing, I'm over it, let me give back to the next generation type of vets. Like, you brought in a guy who's already probably thinking about 2027 summer. You know what I mean? Like this is and his own reputation, building his brand. Now he's got a max deal. You can bet so much of that money is going back into the Fred VanVleet merch brand and to his foundation. And you have seen nothing yet. People like this are relentless. You think, oh my God, okay, Fred VanVleet just signed $130 million. He's going to stop doing what he's doing. Bro, he's just going to double up. He always doubles up. This is what he does. Okay. You think he's satisfied. He's not. His next contract, he's aiming for it to be just as big, if not bigger. So just watch it, right? Like, watch it with him. He is a very hard worker. He is relentless. And Houston, y'all fucked up with this one. Not only the organization, but specifically the entire franchise. L number 5. Oh boy. Jalen Green, Kevin Porter Jr., and Jabari Smith. Specifically these three. Look, they had some issues last year with maturity, leadership, and I completely understand why someone might look at this roster last year and how they played and just their vibe and say, a guy like Fred VanVleet could really add some seriousness to these guys. But man, the personalities of these three players, who I have watched for a very long time. I've watched Jalen Green since high school. I've watched all his overtime specials, and I got to really, really understand this prospect deeply in 2019. I understand who he is as a person, even though I have never met him, and I understand who he vibes with and stuff. This is going to be a hell of a 3 years for him, Jabari, and Kevin Porter Jr. I don't think these personalities mesh at all. And maybe that's a good thing. I don't know, but I think it's like not a good thing. It's not like cookies and cream. It's like water and oil. It's different. Oh, Amen Thompson, welcome to the Scotty Barnes treatment. Not only do you go number 4, not only are you a 6'7" point guard, but now you have to play off ball with Fred VanVleet. Congratulations. This is a really talented kid, like a really talented kid. Like, I have a lot of faith that he could be something really good. And I just wonder the pressure of being a rookie coming in with a leader like Fred. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. Maybe he'll be great for him. I have no idea, but I have my doubts. However, worth noting, Amen Thompson may actually end up being a winner in this, because from what I have gathered, he is actually more the Fred VanVleet type of person. Like, he's very serious, not a big joker, kind of has that, toughness about him and grit. So, but regardless of whether or not he's going to be tough or he's going to vibe with Fred's still starting at point, and that's the most natural position for him to exploit all of his advantages. He's a lot of downhill stuff. He's really shifty, and he has a lot of the stuff that you wish Scotty had, which is like in terms of like the dynamic fluidity of the handle and stuff. And he's a really good passer too. So I don't understand anything that would pull the ball out of his hands. I don't care how much I have to lose next year to do that. To me, he is, without really seeing it, I can't tell you if I'd rather build around him than Jalen Green or Alperen Sengun, but if I had to put my bet on it, I would rather build around him than Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun. Losers number 7. There is no general manager in the league that I respect less than Raphael Stone, except for maybe Troy Weaver. Those two, specifically those two. It's just the lack of team building, their thought process, how they think, how they work, how they operate. Just I can't believe these people have NBA jobs. I really can't. They're so bad. They're so bad at their jobs. So Tillman Fertitta, if you ever see this and you ever manage to get rid of Fred VanVleet's contract, please give me a call. I will work for half of what this dude is doing, and I will clean up your entire roster within a year. Like this, I'm not even joking. Like, this guy is ridiculous. He is straight up, honestly, trash. Tillman Fertitta. Oh, well, there goes my job interview. Honestly, both of these guys take the L here. Just not good cap management. What are you guys doing? You didn't have to spend this money on a free agent. You could have absorbed contracts. There's a ton of bad contracts in the NBA. You don't have to ink a new one, you dumbasses. You could literally have traded for one of 100 albatross contracts that people wanted to get off of. And you could have taken back a second round pick here, a first round pick here, and then waived the guys and done exactly what you've done now, which is you would have gotten over the floor. You don't have to ink a $26 million player for $43 million a year for 3 years. You didn't have to do that. I almost understood it a little bit more when the deal was 82, 2 years. I was like, man, that's a massive overpay, but I get it. Like 2 years, it's not the worst thing in the world. It'll get your fan base excited before they actually watch him fucking play basketball. But 3 years, who the fuck were you outbidding? Honestly, this is ridiculous. This is not reading the room. They wanted to make a splash. It's a mistake. There's no way this is a movable contract. I don't know a single person in the world who would trade for this contract this year or next year. Yeah, maybe he becomes a really big expiring someday, but like you could have done that in a plethora of ways. You probably could have collected extra draft assets if you're worried about that. It's just a dumb move. Like it really is. I'm sorry. It's really stupid. And these two deserve a massive L. Him for hiring him and him for doing it. The Houston fans, man, what a run. You know, Houston has had some of the most interesting teams in NBA history. Yao Ming, Clyde Drexler, Robert Horry, that whole iteration of Rockets basketball. Then y'all had Charles Barkley, Scottie Pippen, granted, very over the hill, but I mean, that must have been really exciting for a little bit, you know, and then you kind of tore it down, and then you had Stevie Franchise, Steve fucking Francis. That dude was so electric. There is still a person in Vancouver who's cursing that guy's name right now, but he was so electric. He was so exciting to watch for those first few years, and you had him, you know, and then you trade him, and who did you get? Oh my God, you got Yao Ming. You know, you got Yao Ming and you traded Steve Francis and Coutinho Mobley, and who'd you get? You got Tracy McGrady. Holy shit, Tracy McGrady in his prime. Granted, he wasn't very, you know, okay, fine. He wasn't healthy, and you didn't really make it far in the playoffs. And I get it, you know, I get it. And you had Stan Van Gundy, you know, Jeff Van Gundy and stuff, and I get that. And then you had Ron Artest for a little bit, and Shane Battier, and then you had kind of like some boring seasons and stuff. But then you had James Harden, man. You got James Harden for nothing. You signed him in free agency because the OKC Thunder are idiots, and they let him go for nothing. And you had an MVP. You had a fucking MVP. And then when you didn't have an MVP, you know, and then you wanted to get him help, and you got him help. You got Dwight Howard. Y'all were excited about that for a little bit, right? And then, you know, Dwight didn't work out. And you got Chris fucking Paul, one of the 75 greatest players of all time. And you got Russell Westbrook and all of that. And now you got Fred VanVleet. Bruh. Ugh. I threw up in my mouth. Like, that is tough. That is like fucking hell. That is like going from like a fresh bakery to like straight up stale Wonder Bread. That is horrible. That is disgusting. And I feel bad for this franchise because they've gone through so much losing the last few years. And it was all because we're going to get draft picks and we're going to get cap space and we're so smart. This is like the worst thing I've ever seen since the process. It's disgusting. It's stupid. Stop it. You fucking idiots. Houston is such an awesome city. I've been there. It's one of the greatest cities in the world. I'm not sucking up to Houston fans. Just got to rip y'all a new one. But I feel bad. It's a great place. It's a great market. Players liked being there, man. They really like it. And it's got a tax haven. It's amazing. Put a fucking winner there. Tillman Fertitta, what are you fucking doing? All right. Loser number 9. Well, yeah, you weren't expecting this one. It's Fred VanVleet. Look, it started out with the winning at Wichita State, right? And then it was winning in the G League. And then it was winning with the Raptors. And the last 3 years haven't been a lot of winning. And to be honest, I think if you put some truth serum in him and you put a gun to his head and said, okay, be honest. Were there times last year that you know that certain shots that you were taking maybe weren't for the best of the team, but were for the best of your, you know, for the best of your box score? And maybe sometimes you took on a role that wasn't necessarily great for you. And maybe sometimes you didn't help Scottie as much as you could because, you know, he was a big threat to take your role. And if he took your role, then you had no leverage with the Raptors to leverage it against the Houston Rockets. And why would the Rockets pay you this exorbitant amount of money if the Raptors had a point guard, right? That was the whole thing. That was the leverage, right? Fred had both teams by their balls. That was it, right? The Raptors couldn't afford to lose him because they've already given up their draft pick next year and they can't really afford to, to lose and be bad. And They have never developed a point guard behind him. Malachi Flynn didn't develop. Delano Banton is God knows where in Boston right now, probably drinking, and in all honesty, Scotty Barnes, like, I mean, half this fan base swears the guy's a fucking center. So, I mean, he hasn't really developed, and these guys haven't developed. And, Fred VanVleet had all the leverage. Kyle was gone. DeLon was gone. All these guys are gone. And he was the guy. He was the only point guard. And you lost him. And, I get that. But at the same time, he had a reputation as a winner. It was a very incorrect, in my opinion, reputation. But that reputation is not for naught. It's not nothing, it's a serious thing. When you start developing a reputation as a loser, as you will inevitably develop after, 2-3 years in the lottery right now, you start to have your entire career kind of tainted. You don't want to spend prolonged time on losing team because all the facade of like how good you are kind of goes away, right? Like if the Rockets come out next year and he's just absolutely trash and they win like 30 games, well, all this Fred VanVleet was carrying the Raptors shit kind of goes away, right? It wasn't really Fred VanVleet carrying the Raptors. It was OG's defense and Scotty's playmaking and Siakam's scoring. And it was just a lot of people doing a lot of things. And he was just getting a lot of credit for it because nobody is as pompous and as loud about their contributions as this dude is. No one's as quick to tell everyone that he's the leader. So, yeah, maybe you make a few more dollars, and that's maybe understating it. You make a lot more money, and I appreciate that. And for your family and for your city and for your bank account, that's all great. But what about your spirit, Fred? What about your soul? What about the false image of a champion? Robert Horry continued to win. Everywhere he went, he wanted to win. And he's developed this reputation as a winner. Life is long, Fred VanVleet. Very long. Okay. Longer than your contract, right? For most people, life is very long. And winners, I tell you, they have this shelf life that goes beyond basketball. And you might be playing a different game. And so you might think you definitely won because the game you're not playing basketball, you're playing Moneyball and you want, the jackpot. And this game is about that. But that's not appealing to anybody. Like, you know what I mean? Like I said earlier, you took care of your family with this. You could have taken care of your family with 4 years, 120. You could have taken care of your families. But you wanted the biggest bag because you're insecure. You're insecure. And now you feel proud, and you had the Rockets give you $550,000 more than Kyrie just so you could say you made more money than Kyrie Irving, because probably at some point you just kind of wanted to stick it to us Raptor fans. You wanted us to know how much we were going to miss you. And instead what you got was an entire city basically saluting that you were gone, and it's sort of backfired. But I got to say, this is like being homeless. When Kyle left, when DeMar was traded, there's still so much love for those players here. That's a marketing opportunity. Further down the line, that's a lot of support. I think the way that last year went, he bled a lot of that love dry. I think we all supported him for a while, and you might be surprised to believe this, but I was a pretty big VanVleet fan in 2016, 2017, 2018. I really liked this guy a lot, and then he changed, and then I changed. And when you change, I'll change, for sure. And I wonder if all of this led to, him doing what he did. I got the championship. Now let me get the bag. He's not the first player to think that way. There's a lot of players who think that way. Bruce Brown just did that. But Bruce Brown didn't go to the Houston Rockets. I mean, most people don't go this far down. There's a reason why, there weren't a lot of free agents just jumping over themselves to go play for the Houston Rockets. It is literally the worst situation in the NBA. It's the worst. You may not believe that, but it is actually the worst. It's a lot of young kids, a lot of dysfunction. It's a questionable at best general manager, owner duo, and a coach who, as much as I like Ime Udoka and support Ime Udoka, like, let's be honest, is part of the biggest coaching scandal of the last 10 years. This may be a situation that most people want to avoid, which is why they overpaid here too. But I wonder how much this will wear on Fred's soul, especially if winning is important to him. I wonder how much, he will miss being part of a really stable and well-run and first-class organization. I wonder what it would even feel like to communicate with Bobby Webster and Masai Ujiri on a daily basis, and then to go from that to communicating with Tillman Fertitta and Raphael Stone. I honestly, I think I just threw up my mouth again. So, in all honesty, I think Fred VanVleet is, in a way, a winner, but also a loser. Now, let us also say that the Raptors are winners. And I'll end on that happy note. I don't have a graphic to show you that the Raptors are winners, so I'm just going to use this. The Raptors are winners in this. And why do I think that? I think the Raptors are winners because they are not going to spend the next 4 years or 3 years fighting with this guy to do something that he's clearly shown you for 3 years he's not willing to do, which is defer and do less. Come off the bench. You don't want to be afraid to ask a non-star player to come off the bench. You know what I mean? This is not the talent that's worth it. Maybe Russell Westbrook was worth it in his prime. You know, you take on maybe an Allen Iverson right at the tail end of his career. He's still box office, you know? Carmelo Anthony. Like guys like this, you know, I think in another life, Fred VanVleet wins like no championships and no playoff rounds. I don't think he realizes how big a part this organization and the players around him played in his reputation as a winner. But I think for the Raptors, this is a new page. They get to turn it. They come out here as winners also, not because the forward vision and the planning and the cap management that was so terribly executed, but they come out as winners because they don't end up looking cheap. Due to channels like Pensari Basketball and YouTubers like Raptors Muse and perhaps other people on Twitter as well, so much of the damage control had already been done preparing for Fred's departure. The fan base has sort of soured on him so much. And all of the inclinations and all of the leanings of the fans were that this guy was selfish and that all he cared about was money and that winning was secondary to him. Do you know how different this would look for the Raptors if Fred VanVleet chose to sign for less money with a contender? It would look terrible for the Raptors because now it looks like he rejected you. And now it looks like, you know, like we were all wrong about this guy. And then you have to watch him like hitting threes in the playoffs the next 2 years as you're struggling to make the play-in. And, you know, maybe he hits like a 35-point game in the playoffs. Can you imagine? Oh, my God. You know, it was hard in a way to watch Kyle do what he was doing in the playoffs, knowing that we didn't make the playoffs. And I'm not a comparative or zero-sum thinker, but I have to say the thought crossed my mind, like, shit, we really missed this guy. Can you imagine having to watch Fred VanVleet win a championship next year as he signs for a mid-level exception with the Denver Nuggets or some shit like that to be their point guard? Like, can you imagine just how much that would defeat the narrative that this was a selfish player who only cared about money and himself, for him to go and be this consummate winner and teammate, re-embrace that entire, you know, team first underdog mentality that he had with the championship run, not only making the Raptors look absolutely ridiculous and making me look completely stupid, and all of us who've said that he was about this shit and he was not about the winning look like idiots, we would all look so stupid. So the Raptors come out looking great. You know, that you have this guy. He's asking for an absurd amount of money because he's selfish, and people will not understand naturally when people think about this. They may not say it, but they know. They know that Houston is a worse situation than Toronto for sure. And they know that there's no way that any person with a straight face was expecting Toronto to match this offer. Not that you could match this offer. It's a max offer from a team that has no tax in their state, no income tax. So it's not a contract that you can even match dollar for dollar. But if your fan base, if this was like a Chris Bosh situation, can you imagine the PR nightmare that would be? That you really got like, wow, you didn't match a max offer on a... People didn't think he was a max player. So the Raptors really went out here for a number of reasons, namely from the PR department situation. They're not taking the hit for cheaping out on this at all. And I'll tell you right now, if public sentiment on this guy was that he was honestly one of the top 5 point guards in the NBA, they would be taking a ton of slack for this, because they could have technically matched that offer if they were willing to go into the tax. And Rogers and Bell are huge companies, and people have no sympathy for corporations. And I tell you, if people genuinely felt like this guy was, imagine if Fred VanVleet wasn't Fred VanVleet. Just imagine for a second that Fred VanVleet wasn't Fred VanVleet, and instead he was Devin Booker. And Devin Booker got like a, I don't know, like a super max offer from somewhere else. And MLSE refused to go into the tax to match it. You would boycott. You would boycott this entire team. You'd boycott this franchise. You'd write hateful letters. You would pollute the airways on talk shows for the next 7 years, saying that MLSE deserves to sell this team, etc. There's none of that. None of that is going to happen now. People genuinely did not want him back at this dollar amount. He signed for the maximum amount. It proves exactly what they are. The Raptors come out as winners. And honestly, long term, you end up winners because honestly, I know some people disagree with this. I know Samson disagrees with this, and Will Lou and all these people, they think it's all conspiracy and it's all conspiratorial and it's all, hoopla and stupid shit. But I tell you, you've removed a presence from your locker room here. I promise you have removed something from your organization that was holding a lot of things back. And I think once you see it on the court, and I think you won't have to wait too long, you'll probably see it in the summer runs if they do summer runs this year, or you'll see it in summer league. You'll see the vibes. You'll see the, camaraderie start to come back. And if you don't think that translates to on-court performance, you're crazy, right? It's going to get better. Okay, now, 50 minutes of ranting. I didn't expect that to go 50 minutes, but, I'm a little bit long-winded, and I apologize for that. But I hope it was entertaining, and there's 241 comments that I will get to at the end, I promise. And I hope some of you are joining in from Serbia and France and Italy, and we've gotten a lot of international subscribers lately, so that's really cool. Now let's talk about what the Raptors do next, because it's not so easy, right? What are the Raptors supposed to do at this point, right? You've lost arguably one of the better players you've lost one of your 3 best players on your team. It's not even disputable. And now here's where you are, right? So, I mean, in terms of what you have to do here, I think it's pretty obvious. And if you really, really, really want the truth, I think you know that it's obvious. The obvious move right now is trading Pascal Siakam and balancing out the shit out of this roster. Now, you'll see here that there are still some openings available, right? There's one minimum. There's a biannual exception player. I don't know who that's going to be, but the Raptors do have that available for $4,500,000 they can pay to that player. And that's probably going to be a player who may have qualified for mid-level, but maybe waited out too long, and maybe now we'll have to settle and you'll have to promise them some playing time, etc., a role. Look, in terms of what I would do with this, and this is just an opinion, right? You have some room under the luxury tax right now, right? You have tax line is 165, right? You can get a little bit more back in contracts now. So let's say, for instance, you do decide to trade a Chris Boucher, or let's say you do decide to trade a Pascal Siakam to a team that's right at the luxury tax line and maybe doesn't want to operate above the tax. Well, now you can actually take back a little bit more in that salary because you're not operating above the cap. So you can take back Pascal Siakam. And if you ship out Siakam 37.89, right? You can take back 41, 42, no problem. You're still under, you're clear, right? If you decide to trade Gary Trent Jr., not that I would suggest it, reports are that they're working on a contract extension that might be announced as soon as tomorrow. You want to trade Malachi Flynn? I wouldn't lose an ounce of sleep over that, to be honest, right? Do you want to trade Otto Porter? Is there a market for Otto Porter? I don't know who you want to trade here, right? I don't. You want to trade OG? I don't know. I really hope not. But let's say you're going to trade somebody. I expect it to be Siakam. I don't think the Raptors can afford for him to hit free agency next year and to have the exact same thing happen. Can you imagine? Now you really are dead at that point. You're dead in the water. If that happens again, like someone's getting fired. I don't care how much tenure and good grace Masai Ujiri has built up. If Masai Ujiri lets Pascal Siakam hit free agency next year, like this is not, oh, we'll be mad at you. Like there will be fucking petitions for this dude to get fired if you lose this asset for nothing. I don't care what you're getting for him. No more patience. You have to move fast. And look, he is a part of the solution and part of the problem. You're kind of in the middle. Obviously, he's a really good player. He's on an expiring deal. You're not going to get full value back, but you're going to need a team that's going to buy into the concept that you're going to be able to get back something for him. You're going to be able to get back something for him. And you need a team that's desperate enough, A, to think that he is the ideal second star next to whoever the hell they have in place, whoever that is. I don't know. Does Atlanta think he's the perfect star next to Trae Young? Does Portland think he's a perfect star next to Damian Lillard? I think those are your two best bets, right? Scoot Henderson has not signed his contract right now. Kobe Buffkin, I don't think has signed his contract yet. And if they have, they're still movable at some point. So look, I would want a young guard back. I'd want salary filler, obviously, and I'd want a young prospect. So I'd want 2 young players back. Now, to some of you, you may say, well, Rob, that's a pretty full roster, right? It's pretty full. You got, let's see, and what's your starting lineup here? First of all, I think your starting lineup is Scotty at point, right? I'm going to keep saying it all summer. Just get used to that. Scotty at point guard, Gary at 2, OG at 3. For now, Pascal at 4, Jakob at 5. I think it's a hell of a starting lineup. In all honesty, I think that's a good starting lineup. I think you make the play in with that starting lineup. Then off the bench, you have a sometimes injured, sometimes not injured Otto Porter. You have rookie Grady Dick. You have Precious Achua. You have Malachi Flynn potentially. I don't think he's going to get minutes, but if he does, Dennis Schroeder, and you have Jeff Doughton, who's not listed here, but will eventually be listed here, and I expect him to get a 2-3 year deal with the Raptors. I think they really like him. So you'll have that. You'll have potentially someone who signs the biannual exception as depth, or maybe a big or a type of player you don't really have on your roster. I'm really not sure what $4.5 million gets you these days when basically scrubs are signing $10-12 million, but whatever, it gets you something. There's a really, really good case to be made that you go 10 deep, which is, kind of hard to believe, but you do go 10 deep here. And look, like the player you just added, and Dennis Schroeder, he's not a total bum, right? Like he was a guy who was playing minutes, like major minutes for a team that made it to the Western Conference Finals in the Lakers, right? As a play-in team. So, he's a decent player. I just think that there's a really big difference between, Gabe Vincent and Dennis Schroeder playing next to Jimmy Butler and LeBron James, and Gabe Vincent and Dennis Schroeder playing next to Pascal Siakam. It's a massive difference. And role players tend to struggle when the stars are not strong. And in your case, in this case, I think Dennis Schroeder is an interesting complement to Scotty. I mean, that may not be apparently obvious, and I'm not a huge Dennis Schroeder fan, and not just let that be known right now. I'm not a huge Dennis Schroeder guy. I've never liked him very much as a player, but I think he provides a skill set that you don't really have. So my goal here would be really I think you need to trade Siakam, and you need to get some younger prospects and some talent on this team. And then you just need to build it out and roll the dice that Scotty plus OG plus Jakob plus Gary plus whatever you get back in that trade plus Grady Dick plus Darko, magic in a bottle can get you 38 to 41 wins. And then you pray that that's enough to get you into the play-in. That would be the read that I would have. I would try to get back some future draft assets in a Pascal Siakam trade if I'm not able to get 2 young players, or if the contract that I'm taking back is too unfavorable. Finally, I would also front load Jakob's deal massively. I would front load that deal. So the way that it's structured right now, Jakob Poeltl it is front loaded. Good stuff. Yes. And I believe that the Raptors will front load this deal. Like they'd be absolutely stupid not to. Like it's such an obvious play that there's no reason not to do it. So this is really how I think the Raptors should play this out. Now, the Raptors have given Jakob Poeltl a 4th-year player option. I don't know why Masai Ujiri always gives players options, and it's not necessary. But if you front load this deal, then that player option actually makes sense because there's actually some sort of chance that he could decline it. From a team building perspective, it's not always great to have that level of uncertainty because the leverage is in his corner. I think you could also flatten it. Like you could flatten it so you pay 20, 20, 20, 20 like that. I don't know. Like there's different things, but I would not I would not backload it. I would definitely front load it or flatline that contract. I think the Raptors can be competitive and at least fun to watch next year, which is a massive step up from treadmill and not fun to watch last year. So take that as you will. Yeah, you'll probably give a pick. Yeah, it'll probably be 10th, 11th, 12th, whatever. It'll be to the Spurs and you'll cry about it for a minute, but you're not the first, Imagine how other teams have done it, right? Imagine how teams like the Brooklyn Nets, they gave up lottery picks. They gave up top 3 picks to the Boston Celtics. That hurts. It hurts a lot. it hurts a lot to know, that your franchise has squandered something that badly. But in all honesty, I think once you see who's picked with those picks, you won't feel so bad. So that's my take on it. I would consider this a strong indication that the Raptors should probably rebuild, unless they have a very, very promising conversation with Pascal Siakam in which, he agrees. Okay, and I think there's a sort of underrated complication here, which is that, like, you really don't want this season to become a repeat of last season. And last season was Fred VanVleet betting on himself. And this year, I don't want to see Pascal Siakam betting on himself trying to make All NBA. First of all, it's a massive long shot to make All NBA when you're not on a winning team. First of all, voters will always hold that against you. Second of all, it's hard enough to make All NBA when you're not one of the top 15 players in the league. You have to almost hope for other people to get injured. So the odds of Pascal Siakam making All NBA next year is very difficult. And you can certainly force feed it to him, and you can try to get him 100 possessions a game or something like that. But I don't see what the point is for anybody. Nobody wins there except for Siakam. And, learn your lessons with Fred VanVleet here. If you have a player who's kind of just in a contract year and they're just going to kind of hijack your team. And I'm not saying that Siakam would, but I've kind of seen Siakam do it before a couple of times. And I'm just not for it. I don't want to watch the whole thing happen again. I don't want to see Grady and Scotty and OG and Gary being frozen out of the offense as this guy dribbles the ball 15 times. I just don't want to see it. So if he agrees to buy in, he can be a part. He can certainly be a part of it. But if he wants to be the guy, if he's still trying to prove to himself that he's a number one on a championship team, I think I've seen enough over the last 4 years to say, get what you can and move on. Yeah, you probably won't look smart. Yeah, other teams are kind of they're going to know that you're in a more desperate situation than you were, 2 weeks ago. And you may not get exactly the same deal you would have gotten draft night or even last year at the trade deadline or even, God forbid, last summer if you had not put us through this horrible season. But I think there is some cost fallacy where sometimes, you become very insecure and you're trying to get a small win. And I think that that's very important to not do that. Both in your life, my life, it's very important that, I was a trader. I was a hedge fund trader. And one of the lessons we learned very early on was that there's a very powerful human emotion that forces you to get very defensive after losing. You get a loss, you immediately want to win. You want to win. You want a quick win to get it back. So the rule that we had was if you there was a certain limit of how much you could lose in, I think it was 30-minute stretch. In terms of, we were day trading, everything was super fast. So if you lost a certain amount of money over that 30-minute period, you just basically got stopped out of your account for 2 hours. That's just how it works. And sometimes the boss would just tell us go home. You lost $18,000 in 2 hours. This is serious money. Let's just call it a day. So yeah, I think sometimes it's really good to not chase the knife. Sometimes it's really good to just chill, and I think this might be a time to just cut your losses and move on with the next iteration. Now, if Siakam's gone and Fred VanVleet's gone, I'm not even going to suggest that you're going to win 45 games or anything like that. But you could be surprisingly competitive, and I think it'll be a really good growth opportunity. And you have a lot of really good young players, good guys, young players like OG and Scotty. They're just good guys, right? Jeff Doughton. These are not knuckleheads. These are not kids who don't know how to be professional. These are people who I think genuinely will take the challenge of rising up to the occasion. And maybe a lot of these kids have a bit of a chip on their shoulder, You know what I mean? They've kind of sat around, they've waited, they've been called out in the media by Fred VanVleet, they've been called immature, they've been said that they didn't earn their opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I think, the biggest fuck you in the world to all of those narratives and, being sort of slandered and, for a guy like Gary Trent being danced in and out of the lineup in a contract year, potentially costing him millions of dollars, which is exactly what Nick Nurse did. Having Fred VanVleet sort of call them out, having this coaching staff prior to, fuck them out of roles that they maybe felt that they deserved. I mean, this season could be a massive chip on all of their shoulders, and there should be. I mean, crazy if there is not. If the vibes were as bad as we hear that they were last year, I think it swings like a pendulum. When you are in hell, which is apparently what last year felt like in the locker room. It felt like hell. It felt like torture. Then the release from hell is equally. It almost goes to the opposite extreme. in terms of emotions, momentum, all of that stuff. So, I mean, the clearest example of this would be, like when you hold your breath for like 30 seconds and take a breath, right? The breath is different. Or if you're really thirsty for 6-7 hours and you take a drink of water, it's just the same thing. So I think that there's like a renewed passion and energy, and so much of passion, energy, chemistry leads to winning, especially early on in the season. So I think the Raptors will take it as a challenge. I think these are all proud individuals, including Pascal Siakam, including Jakob Poeltl. I think these are all very proud players. I think some of them are very good players, and I think some of them can develop in ways that maybe we don't give them credit for. Now, there's 307 comments, and I'm going to finally look at them. I apologize for not looking at it. As you can tell, my eyes are closing, and I'm very, very sleepy. And yeah, but I do my best. Thank y'all for staying up so late. Wow, there's a lot of comments. I apologize. I just missed so much. I would love to do this show with somebody so that like people can, just sort of bring the comments on, right, while I'm doing it. Didn't think Fred VanVleet had that many fans. Happy birthday. Rob doesn't sleep ever. Yeah, well, Rob is on the grind, I guess. I've got a this is funny. That's really funny, bro. Oh man. Marquis got to bulk up if he wants to play defense. He's pretty strong, dude. Like he's built. Like he's not skinny. I think he might be, but I think he's like the second. Yeah, they did give Schroeder the mid-level exception to come off the bench. Are you kidding me? Who do you think he's starting over? You think he's going to start over Fred Van? You think he's going to start over Gary Trent, Scotty, OG, Pascal? Like, do the math, man. Like, you can tell me, fine. Like, maybe, just maybe, if they trade Pascal, then maybe he can start. If they don't get back a starting caliber player for Pascal, but it's very difficult to imagine that Dennis Schroeder is coming in to start for you. Really? Why? No. That's crazy. I heard Samson Folks like reaction pod to this whole thing, and he was just immediately like, Dennis Schroeder is starting. No, he is not. No. I know. It's crazy. I wouldn't hold my breath for Dennis Schroeder starting. I think it's a perfect bench role. He's here. You had to use that money to some extent. The market was really drying up. Fred kind of fucked you over by taking so long to do it. But as a Rocket fan, I'm not upset about overpaying Fred. Not my money. Got a vet to help in Udoka change the culture of the young roster, and Fred isn't going to run over Udoka like he did Nurse. That's fair. I mean, that's fair enough. I just think there are better options, and you could have had more of them, and you didn't have to sign them. You could have traded for them and probably gotten, y'all don't like Davis Bertans and Rashawn Holmes. Like, you probably gotten those guys and probably taken back contracts. You could probably gotten back picks for it, future picks. Like take a lesson from Sam Presti. Granted, not a perfect general manager by any means, but at least someone who gets it. Like, Sam Presti's smart. Like, Sam is really smart. I remember Sam like back in Boston, like 15 years ago. That dude's been smart forever, right? He gets it. Raphael Stone does not. This is not by any means adequate use of team building, cap space, none of it. So much you leave on the table when you do this. Scotty's going to be as good as he wants to be. Yeah, you know what? I've said the same thing. Brian said the same thing. His friends have said the same thing. I think a lot of people who watch him would say the same thing. But yes, I know it felt very passive aggressive when he said it. Sometimes I am funny. I'm curious what I said. I'll have to watch it later to see what I said that y'all were laughing at so hard. Was it the throw up in my mouth part? Oh man. Wow. This is seriously live. Good for you. Yes, it is. Hoodie Mellow, I hate to break it to you, but Marquise Noel is actually much closer to 5'6" than he is to 5'8". Yeah. He measured 5'6.5" in shoes, 5'6 3/4. Sorry, not in shoes, without shoes. So granted, basketball is played in shoes, so he's 5'8", but Fred VanVleet measured nearly 6'1" in shoes. So just to give you a clear perspective on that, that's a 5-inch gap between the shortest player in the team last year and the shortest player in the team this year. I don't think people are fully appreciating just how small a player he is. When you see him standing next to Scotty or Grady, you'll see it. Like, he's a very small person. And that's not to say that he can't be a good player. I'm just because Bugsy Bogues is a hell of a player and TJ Ford is a great player, but TJ was a lot bigger. Even TJ was bigger than him. I think TJ measured in about 5'10" without shoes, or 5'9.5". It's still a 3-inch gap, man. It's 3-inch gap. I will say this about Dennis Schroeder, and I don't know if any other analysts have brought it up, but he is very long. I don't know if you can see that from everything about him, but he's got about a 6'8" wingspan. So it's at least something, it's a 6'2" guy with a 6'8" wingspan. So you get some size and some length at that point guard spot. And unlike Fred, I don't think necessarily that he would be nearly as ball dominant. He's played with LeBron. He's played with, other primary creators and stuff. He's played with Russ. He's played off ball a lot. Granted, Fred VanVleet has also played off ball a lot in his career, and he totally hijacked the offense. But I don't think Dennis Schroeder is necessarily coming in with the exact same, clout as Fred VanVleet, with the coaching staff especially. And more than anything, I just trust Darko to not do that. Yeah, his legs are skinny, but his upper body is tight, and I think that's like the right place you want to be. For an undersized guard, you want to have shoulders. You want to be a little wide. Marquise Noel, I think, has a 6-foot wingspan. So at least it's something. Fred VanVleet had about a 6'1", 6'2" wingspan. So, honestly, and then that's the other thing. OG is also an unrestricted free agent next year, and with OG, at least you kind of see, he just feels like he's gonna stay, right? He and Scotty really are close, and they're really good friends. Like, they're really tight. So that to me feels like they'll find a way to make that work. But with Siakam, I think that might be a little bit more complicated, right? Because you don't know what was holding him here. You don't know if all of the don't trade for me. You realize, I told you all this in the live previously also, but like, a lot of that don't trade me or I won't sign with you stuff very easily could have just been posturing from his camp, because they don't want to fuck up Fred VanVleet's contract here, right? Fred VanVleet's in a position to take care of his family. You know for sure that Fred and Pascal look after each other heavily. Fred was the biggest advocate for Scotty, for Pascal being, all NBA. Pascal was the biggest advocate for Fred VanVleet making the All-Star team. Like, these guys campaign for each other massively. Okay, you need to read what these guys are doing for each other, and it's admirable, and they should be doing that for each other. But that sort of cabal that forms, right? It's a joint package. And so Pascal would never necessarily want to do something that fucks up Fred's bag, right? And to be honest, does Fred get this contract if Pascal Siakam gets traded on draft night? No, because who does he get traded for? Scoot Henderson. What are you doing then? Rebuilding. What position does Scoot play? Point guard. So Fred VanVleet wouldn't even have an offer. He certainly wouldn't have negotiating power. And certainly the Rockets would not be stupid enough to believe that the Raptors could fall apart if they didn't lose. Do you know what I mean? So connect the dots here for yourself. I'm not trying to be conspiratorial. Please understand the logical leap that I took from A to B is not complicated, and I think it's almost obvious to anyone who is looking at this possession objectively here. Pascal's tune changes the minute Fred VanVleet walks, and you know that Fred VanVleet talked to Pascal Siakam over the last week, right? So this whole situation could very easily result in Pascal Siakam basically telling the Raptors next year or next week that he wants out. Like, this could very easily be the dominating talk of the summer. I think you'd be smart to move now, while before summer league, before, training camp, etc. You don't want to drag this out and have this will he stay, will he go stuff hanging over your head all season. Because while it was worth it with Vince, and it might even have been worth it with young Bosch, it was not worth it with older Bosch, and it was definitely worth it with Kawhi. I don't think it's worth it with Pascal. to have this entire insecurity of like, will he leave for nothing or will he go, etc. If we start losing more, does his contract value go down? What if he demands a trade in the mid season? My option will be worse. It's just not worth it. It's not worth it. So look, I told them to tank at the deadline. They didn't do it. Right? Who the fuck am I? I'm a YouTuber. I'm not an NBA professional, right? I'm not a general manager. I'm just a guy with an opinion on the internet that has a microphone that my girlfriend bought me. Cool. And a webcam from 2012. That's just the truth, right? Who am I? Film festival founder, filmmaker. Shit, that's nothing, you know? Like, I'm not an NBA general manager. I'm not an agent. I'm not, you know, some people think I'm an analyst. Some people find that very debatable. Just a guy who talks into a microphone that some people think is, you know, has a point. And I'm telling you that, you know, this Pascal situation could get really bad unless you really talk to him and you 100% read him and you know exactly that you are both on the same page in terms of what you want and what he wants. And if that's great, then that's great. But this can get complicated fast. I would move on him. There's two teams that really want him right now. If you believe the rumors that the Hawks and the Blazers want him, you need two. You don't want to be negotiating when you have one. You always want two. Ideally, two that don't work well together and don't know each other very well and may lie to each other. You ideally want that. You know, the Raptors don't have a great relationship with the Houston Rockets. I can just tell you that from everything I've heard. They have not had a ton of dealings with this organization. So pitting these two organizations against each other was not difficult because there isn't a great deal of overlap in terms of the contacts and how they operate and the circles that they walk in, etc. I can imagine Raphael Stone and Masai Ujiri maybe have not had too many conversations in their lives the way that Masai Ujiri and RC Buford have probably had a lot of conversations in their lives. There's a couple front offices that just, you know, you'll notice they always do work together. And then there's just some that don't, you know, and that's just how the nature of front offices. So yeah, so I'm very curious because I think that this is a golden opportunity. And, you know, from the Hawks, I would want AJ Griffin, Kobe Buffkin, maybe Bogdanovich, right? Onyeka Okongwu. I would want some variation of that package back for Pascal. And from the Blazers, I would want Scoot and contracts. I don't need anything else. I just need Scoot and contracts. You fill up whatever you want. I'll waive them. I don't care. I believe that much in Scoot Henderson's potential top end. Yeah. All right, guys, take care. Have a great morning. It is 4:19 in the morning, and I have a feeling, I'm hoping that when I wake up, I will see that little notification from YouTube saying, congratulations, 6,000 subscribers. That'll be awesome. Take care, guys. Have a great one. And I'm really looking forward to Summer League. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the positive vibes being back on this channel. Take care, guys. Final comments. Peace. Yeah. It's 1:20 a.m. Basketball zone, bro. It is 4:20 a.m. It's 4:20 over here. Yeah, we grinding. I see you grinding too. Congratulations. I do not like the Harrison Barnes deal necessarily, but I get it. I understand it. So yeah. Anyway, y'all, talk later. Leo, let's do a live to break down like how wild free agency is after a few more contracts get signed, maybe this weekend if you're down. All right, peace, guys. Take care. And I'm really excited, by the way. I got to tell you, next week, that video with Kat is coming out, the neuroscientist that I know. And we're going to be talking about, I'm just going to keep plugging it because eventually when it comes out, y'all are going to have to decide to click on a video that says neuroscience. And I hope you just say yes, because it's going to be a really good discussion. And if you ever wanted to wow everybody at the barbershop with like awesome facts about how athletes think and how their brains work, I think you're going to want to tune into that one. So I'm going to do it and I'm going to edit it and I'm going to get it out next week. My plate is clear for the next week. So all these videos that I've been working on, I looked at it. I have them all recorded. I just need to put graphics and shit over them. I'm going to lay them out. And yeah, man, I'm going to grind. Like I want to get this up to 10,000 subscribers before the season starts. That's my publicly stated goal. You want me to share my private goal? I want to get up to 50,000. Is that crazy? That's nuts, right? I'm never going to hit it, but I want to try anyway. So yeah, take care, everyone. Happy Canada Day. Talk to you later.